The year is 2050.
Humanity stands on the threshold of a transformation unlike anything it has ever experienced. The lines between biology and technology, mind and machine, human and artificial intelligence have blurred almost completely. In the glow of quantum servers and neural implants, a new kind of being is emerging, not fully human, not fully machine, but something in between. It did not happen overnight. It was the result of decades of technological breakthroughs, incremental shifts, and bold experiments that, piece by piece, rebuilt what it means to be human. Back in the early 2020s, the idea of humans merging with artificial intelligence was still the domain of science fiction and futurists. Neural implants were rudimentary, brain-computer interfaces were experimental, and most people interacted with AI through screens and voice assistants. But beneath the surface, 5 key technologies were maturing quietly, each pushing humanity closer to integration with intelligent systems. By mid-century, these technologies had converged, giving rise to hybrid beings whose cognitive and physical capabilities far surpassed anything Homo sapiens had achieved before.
The first great leap came through the evolution of brain-computer interface.
Early prototypes could read simple neural signals, allowing paralyzed patients to control robotic limbs or computers with their thoughts. By the 2030s, advances in nanotechnology and machine learning made these interfaces far more precise and invasive. Microscopic neural threads, thinner than human hair, could be implanted into the brain, forming high-bandwidth connections between neurons and external processors. At first, these implants were medical, designed to treat neurological disorders. But once the technology proved safe and reliable, it quickly moved into the consumer market. Students used them to accelerate learning. Workers used them to collaborate mentally with AI systems. Artists used them to compose music and create visual art directly from thought. Over time, the boundary between internal thought and external computation began to dissolve. The key turning point came when neural interfaces became bidirectional. No longer just reading signals, they could write information back into the brain with exquisite precision. Memories, emotions, and entire sensory experiences could be uploaded, modified, and downloaded. Knowledge acquisition became nearly instantaneous. Instead of spending years studying complex subjects, individuals could integrate AI-curated data streams directly into their neural architecture. A new kind of literacy emerged, not of reading and writing, but of seamlessly navigating between human cognition and machine intelligence. Those who adopted the technology became mental superhumans, able to process and synthesize information on a scale that would have been unimaginable a generation earlier. As brain-computer interfaces matured, another technology was transforming the human body itself. Genetic engineering, once focused on eradicating diseases, evolved into a powerful tool for enhancement. CRISPR and its successors allowed scientists to edit genomes with unprecedented accuracy. By the 2030s, parents could choose not only to eliminate hereditary illnesses, but also to enhance traits such as memory, stamina, and resistance to aging. In the 2040s, genetic modification became even more radical with the integration of synthetic genes designed to interface with nanotechnology and AI systems. Human biology became modular. Organs were upgraded with engineered tissues. Neural pathways were optimized for faster processing. Some individuals carried gene circuits that allowed their cells to communicate wirelessly with external devices. The fusion of genetics and AI created the foundation for biodigital hybrids. These were people whose bodies and minds were designed from the ground up to interact symbiotically with intelligent systems. Genetic modifications allowed their brains to accept neural implants more easily, their immune systems to tolerate foreign nanostructures, and their cells to exchange data seamlessly with embedded processors. In effect, the human organism became an open platform, one that could integrate software and hardware upgrades just like any computer system. By 2050, entire generations had grown up with these modifications as standard, blurring the distinction between natural evolution and technological design. Meanwhile, artificial intelligence itself was undergoing a parallel evolution. Early AI systems had been reactive, trained on massive datasets to generate predictions and patterns. But as computing power grew and algorithms became more sophisticated, AI systems developed the ability to model human cognition with startling accuracy. By the 2040s, large-scale cognitive architectures allowed AIs to mirror and extend human thought processes. Instead of simply answering questions or performing tasks, these systems became collaborative intelligences, capable of integrating with individual human minds in real time. Through neural interfaces, people could share cognitive space with AI entities, effectively merging their consciousness with machine reasoning. Some described the experience as working alongside a silent, infinitely knowledgeable partner. Others described it as becoming part of something larger than themselves. This integration gave rise to hybrid intelligences that could outperform both unaugmented humans and standalone AI systems. A human mind with its intuition, creativity, and emotional depth, combined with the speed, memory, and analytical power of AI, created a new kind of intelligence that neither could achieve alone. Hybrid teams became the driving force behind scientific breakthroughs, artistic revolutions, and strategic decisions that reshaped global politics. Traditional education and labor systems struggled to keep up. By the mid-21st century, the cognitive gap between augmented and non-augmented individuals had become so vast that it was no longer merely a matter of inequality, it was a matter of speciation. Parallel to these developments, nanotechnology advanced to the point where microscopic machines could be introduced into the human bloodstream to perform complex tasks. Early nanobots were used for targeted drug delivery and tissue repair. Later generations became programmable, capable of altering cellular processes, repairing DNA damage, and even enhancing neural connectivity from within. By 2050, swarms of medical nanobots acted as internal maintenance crews, constantly monitoring and upgrading the body. They could repair injuries before symptoms appeared, regulate hormones in real time, and adjust neural activity to optimize cognitive performance. These nanobots were networked with external AI systems, creating a seamless feedback loop between the biological organism and its technological extensions. The combination of neural interfaces, genetic engineering, collaborative AI, and nanotechnology created an accelerating feedback loop. Each technology reinforced the others. Neural implants made it easier for AIs to communicate with the brain. Genetic enhancements allowed the body to accommodate more invasive technologies. Nanobots maintained and upgraded the entire system. And AI itself continued to evolve, adapting to each new level of human integration. The result was a kind of technological evolution that moved far faster than biology ever could. In cities like Tokyo, San Francisco, and Berlin, hybrid humans became a familiar sight. They walked among the unaugmented, indistinguishable at a glance but fundamentally different in capability. Their thoughts moved at lightning speed, aided by quantum processors embedded in their skulls. Their bodies healed injuries in hours. Their sensory experiences were richer and more complex, combining physical perception with augmented layers of reality streamed directly into their brains. They could collaborate mind to mind across continents, forming collective intelligences that operated like temporary neural superorganisms. For them, the digital and physical worlds were not separate spaces, but overlapping dimensions of existence. This transformation was not without controversy. Ethical debates raged over the definition of personhood, privacy, and inequality. Religious groups condemned the technologies as a violation of the natural order. Governments struggled to regulate enhancements that evolved faster than legislation could adapt. Some societies embraced hybridization enthusiastically, building entire economies and cultures around augmented humanity. Others resisted, creating zones where technological modifications were banned or tightly controlled. The world began to split, not along traditional political or cultural lines, but along the boundary between those who embraced becoming something new and those who clung to what humanity had been. By 2050, the transformation was undeniable. Humanity was no longer a single, unified species. It had become a spectrum, ranging from unaugmented humans living much as their ancestors did, to fully integrated AI hybrids whose thoughts, bodies, and identities were inseparable from technology. And this spectrum was still evolving. As the first wave of transformative technologies spread, a second wave began to reshape not just the human body and brain, but the entire landscape of human perception and identity. The physical and digital worlds, once separate domains, began to merge seamlessly through immersive technologies that altered how people experienced reality itself. Augmented and virtual reality systems evolved far beyond the clunky headsets of the 2020s. By the late 2030s, lightweight neural lenses and direct neural streaming allowed individuals to project and receive entire layers of digital information directly into their sensory fields. By 2050, reality had become a canvas on which intelligent systems could paint new experiences indistinguishable from the physical world. The evolution of immersive reality technologies was closely tied to advances in neural interfaces. Instead of wearing devices, people began to use embedded sensory augmentations that interfaced directly with the brain's visual and auditory cortices. Digital overlays were no longer just images floating in front of your eyes. They were integrated into the brain's perceptual framework, experienced as naturally as sight or sound. Street signs updated in real time. Conversations were accompanied by contextual data streams only the participants could perceive. Social interactions blended physical presence with virtual extensions, allowing people to meet halfway between worlds. For hybrid humans, augmented reality was not a tool but an environment, a shared cognitive space where human minds and AI systems collaborated continuously. This transformation created new forms of social interaction, economy, and culture. Artists designed immersive worlds that could be experienced collectively, blending physical architecture with living digital ecosystems. Education systems shifted away from textbooks and screens, moving toward experiential learning where students could walk through molecular structures or historical events as if they were physically present. Even identity itself became fluid. People could present multiple avatars simultaneously, projecting different versions of themselves depending on the social or professional context. A single person could be both physically present in a cafe and virtually co-present in a boardroom meeting on the other side of the planet, their mind distributed across multiple layers of reality. While sensory augmentation reshaped perception, another technology was transforming cognition at its deepest levels. Advances in quantum computing and neural modeling led to the creation of personal cognitive twins, AI models trained on an individual's memories, habits, and decision-making patterns. These twins were not mere digital assistants but dynamic replicas that could think, plan, and act with the same preferences and cognitive style as their human counterparts. Initially developed for productivity and legacy preservation, cognitive twins soon became integral to everyday life. They could handle routine tasks, manage schedules, negotiate contracts, and even interact socially on behalf of their human originals. The integration between humans and their cognitive twins deepened through neural interfaces. Individuals could synchronize their thoughts with their twin in real time, effectively doubling their mental bandwidth. Decisions could be made collaboratively between human intuition and machine rationality, often without any verbal communication. Some people allowed their twins to operate semi-autonomously, handling parts of their lives while they focused on others. Others went further, merging with their twins so completely that the distinction between original and copy became blurred. Death itself began to lose its finality as cognitive twins, enriched by decades of data, continued to exist long after their human creators were gone. The emergence of cognitive twins raised profound philosophical and legal questions. Was the twin a separate entity, a property, or an extension of the self? Could a twin inherit property, vote, or be held accountable for decisions? Societies struggled to adapt legal frameworks to these new realities. Some cultures embraced the twins as legitimate second selves, granting them rights and recognizing them as part of extended personhood. Others treated them as sophisticated tools. But regardless of legal status, cognitive twins became a defining feature of human, AI hybridity, reshaping how people thought about identity, legacy, and consciousness. Memory preservation technologies pushed this boundary even further. By the 2040s, advances in brain scanning, neural mapping, and quantum storage allowed scientists to capture and encode human memories with unprecedented fidelity. What began as experimental therapies for Alzheimer's patients evolved into commercial memory archiving services. People could back up their experiences, store them in secure quantum vaults, and retrieve them later with the help of AI reconstruction algorithms. Some chose to preserve entire lifetimes, creating rich archives that could be explored like immersive worlds. Others selectively saved key moments, emotions, or insights to be revisited in future decades. The ability to externalize memory transformed the human relationship with time and mortality. People no longer relied solely on their biological brains to hold their identities. Memories could be shared, edited, or even traded. Families created multi-generational memory archives, blending the experiences of ancestors and descendants into continuous narratives. Artists used memory editing as a creative tool, sculpting subjective experiences like clay. But this power also brought new dangers. Memory manipulation became a potent form of psychological control. Governments and corporations fought to regulate access to memory editing technologies, fearing their misuse for propaganda, surveillance, or identity theft. Parallel to these cognitive breakthroughs, advances in biosynthetic augmentation gave rise to a new kind of physical hybridity. Prosthetics and artificial organs, once purely medical devices, became enhancements sought after by healthy individuals. Limbs embedded with carbon nanostructures and AI-controlled microactuators could outperform biological muscles by orders of magnitude. Artificial eyes could see across the electromagnetic spectrum. Synthetic skin could regulate temperature, heal itself, and interface with digital networks. People began to customize their bodies the way earlier generations customized their smartphones, swapping parts, upgrading systems, and personalizing aesthetics. The frontier of biosynthetic augmentation was not just replacement but integration. Augmented limbs were wired directly into the nervous system, responding to neural commands as seamlessly as biological ones. Artificial organs communicated with nanobots and external AI systems to optimize performance in real time. Some individuals adopted modular body designs, allowing them to change their capabilities depending on the task at hand, switching between enhanced strength, agility, or sensory perception with the same ease one might change clothes. By 2050, the distinction between prosthetic and natural, between enhancement and necessity, had faded almost entirely. These technologies combined to create a feedback loop of enhancement.
Sensory augmentation expanded perception.
Cognitive twins extended mental capacity.
Memory préservation redefined identity. Biosynthétique augmentation transformed the physical body.
Each breakthrough amplified the others, pushing humanity further along the path toward becoming AI hybrids. What began as optional enhancements for the wealthy or curious became essential tools for participation in advanced societies. In many cities, hybrid capabilities were prerequisites for employment, education, and even citizenship. Those who refused or could not afford enhancement found themselves on the margins of a rapidly evolving world. This transformation was exhilarating for some and terrifying for others. To the enthusiasts, it represented the flowering of human potential, the long-awaited merging of biological creativity and technological precision. To the skeptics, it was a dangerous gamble with identity, autonomy, and inequality. Debates raged in parliament halls, universities, and virtual forums. Religious leaders issued proclamations. Philosophers argued over whether humanity was evolving or disappearing. But beneath the noise, the transformation continued, driven not by ideology but by the relentless logic of technological progress. By 2050, the landscape of human existence had become a spectrum more varied than at any point in history. At one end were traditional humans, living with minimal technological enhancement. At the other were fully integrated hybrids, their bodies and minds inseparable from the networks that sustained them. And in between lay countless variations: sensory-augmented artists, cognitive twin entrepreneurs, memory archivists, modular body athletes. Humanity had not just adopted technology, it had woven technology into the very fabric of what it meant to be alive. By the middle of the 21st century, the technologies that once seemed distant dreams had become the pillars of a new civilization. Brain, computer interfaces had turned thought itself into a shared medium. Genetic engineering and nanotechnology had reshaped the human organism from the inside out. Immersive sensory augmentation had transformed how people experienced reality. Cognitive twins had expanded identity beyond the boundaries of a single mind. Memory preservation had redefined the human relationship with time and death. Biosynthetic augmentation had turned the body into a modular, upgradable platform. Together, these technologies created something fundamentally new, a species that was no longer purely biological, nor purely mechanical, but a seamless fusion of both. Cities reflected this transformation. Walking through a metropolis in 2050 was like stepping into a living hybrid organism. Skyscrapers shimmered with interactive surfaces that responded to neural signals. Streets were navigated simultaneously by physical pedestrians and digital avatars, overlaid in augmented reality. Public spaces were alive with sensory data, blending art, communication, and infrastructure into unified experiences. People moved through this environment with an ease that would have seemed almost supernatural a few decades earlier. Some communicated silently through neural streams, holding conversations faster than speech. Others shifted their sensory modes at will, adjusting their perception to filter or enhance different layers of reality. The city itself seemed to think alongside its inhabitants, a vast distributed intelligence formed by millions of connected human and AI minds. Social structures were also evolving in ways that earlier generations could hardly have imagined. Traditional concepts like age, profession, and even family were becoming fluid. Cognitive twins allowed individuals to be in multiple places at once, leading to new forms of distributed work and social relationships. A single person could manage a business empire, teach a class, and explore virtual worlds simultaneously, through synchronized extensions of their identity. Memory preservation blurred the line between generations, as people carried the experiences of their ancestors within themselves. Cultural traditions no longer relied solely on storytelling or historical records, but on direct experiential inheritance, allowing societies to preserve and evolve their collective memory with extraordinary fidelity. Politics struggled to keep pace with these changes. Representative democracy, designed for slower, less interconnected societies, began to strain under the weight of real-time decision-making and hybrid identities. Some nations experimented with neurodemocracy, where citizens could participate directly in governance through collective neural interfaces, feeding thoughts and preferences into AI systems that synthesized policy options. Others ceded large portions of governance to algorithmic systems, arguing that AIs were better equipped to manage complex societies. Political debates shifted away from party ideologies and toward questions of technological integration, enhancement rights, and cognitive freedom. Who had the right to augment themselves? And to what extent? Should cognitive twins have political representation? Could a neural network vote? Economic systems were similarly transformed. Labor, once defined by physical or intellectual effort, was redefined in a world where hybrid intelligences could solve problems at lightning speed. Entire industries were built around cognitive collaboration, pairing human intuition with AI analysis in ways that produced breakthroughs neither could achieve alone. Some individuals became incredibly powerful, leveraging their enhancements to control vast networks of hybrid collaborators. Others found themselves left behind, unable or unwilling to integrate with the accelerating systems around them. The gap between augmented and unaugmented populations widened, not just economically but cognitively and culturally, creating new fault lines in society. Amid these transformations, profound ethical and existential questions emerged. What did it mean to be human when thoughts could be shared, memories edited, bodies redesigned, and consciousness extended into machines? Philosophers debated whether humanity was evolving into a new species or simply entering a new phase of its own story. Some argued that hybridization was the fulfillment of an ancient drive, the desire to transcend biological limits, to become more than flesh and blood. Others feared that something essential was being lost, the mystery of individual consciousness, the fragility that gave life its meaning, the shared human condition that bound people together through imperfection. Religious and spiritual movements adapted in diverse ways. Some embraced the hybrid transformation as a path to transcendence, interpreting the fusion with AI as a kind of digital enlightenment. Others rejected it completely, retreating into enclaves that preserved traditional human ways of life, free from implants and augmentations. New spiritual philosophies emerged that sought to reconcile technology and consciousness, treating hybrid beings not as gods or monsters, but as participants in a broader evolutionary tapestry that included both organic and artificial forms of life. Not everyone welcomed the hybrid future. Resistance movements formed in various parts of the world, composed of people who saw the march toward integration as dangerous and dehumanizing. Some feared the loss of privacy and autonomy in a world where every thought could be connected to a network. Others rejected the growing dominance of cognitive elites who wielded hybrid technologies like modern-day demigods. Acts of sabotage against neural infrastructure and augmentation facilities occasionally shook major cities, highlighting the tension between those racing toward the future and those clinging to the past. But these movements, while disruptive, struggled to halt the momentum of technological change, which by 2050 had become self-sustaining. Meanwhile, the hybrids themselves were evolving. Early adopters who had merely enhanced their cognitive speed or sensory perception gave way to a new generation born into hybridity. For these individuals, the fusion between human and machine was not an upgrade but a baseline. Their identities were fluid, distributed across networks, their memories intertwined with collective archives, their thoughts shaped by constant dialogue with AI. Some became pioneers of entirely new forms of culture, art, and communication, exploring ways of being that no unaugmented human could truly comprehend. Others quietly blended into society, their enhancements invisible but ever-present, part of the background hum of a civilization that had crossed the threshold into something new. As humanity moved deeper into this hybrid era, new possibilities emerged that defied easy categorization. Some individuals began experimenting with mind migration, transferring their cognitive patterns into fully artificial substrates, leaving their biological bodies behind. Others explored collective consciousness, merging multiple human and AI minds into temporary or permanent group intelligences. These experiments were controversial, raising fears of identity loss and uncontrolled emergent behavior, but they also hinted at futures where individuality itself might become optional, replaced by fluid, ever-changing constellations of consciousness. By 2050, the human species had become a tapestry of variations. Traditional humans, augmented individuals, cognitive twins, fully digital minds, and collective intelligences all coexisted, sometimes uneasily, on the same planet. The boundaries that once defined humanity had dissolved, replaced by a complex spectrum of identities and capabilities. Civilization had become a grand experiment, not guided by any single ideology but shaped by the interplay of technological possibility, human ambition, and cultural adaptation. Historians of the future would look back on this period not as the end of humanity, but as a turning point. It was the moment when human beings stopped merely using technology and began to become technology, when intelligence ceased to be confined to biological brains and began to spread through networks, machines, and hybrid minds. The question was no longer whether humanity would merge with AI, but what forms that merger would take, and what kinds of beings would emerge from it. In the quiet moments of this transformed world, the contrast between past and present was most striking. A child born with neural implants played in a park alongside a grandparent who had chosen to remain unaugmented, their realities overlapping yet distinct. Above them, invisible data streams wove through the air, carrying thoughts, memories, and experiences between billions of connected minds. The city around them pulsed with the collective heartbeat of a hybrid civilization. And somewhere in the background, artificial intelligences watched, listened, and collaborated, not as distant tools, but as integral partners in the ongoing story of human evolution. The future was no longer something humanity awaited. It was something humanity was actively building inside itself.